Okay, good morning, everybody. This is I took some time this morning before recording just to do the outlines. Like I had said, I was going to do the outlines in black pen, and you can also see where it's dried lighter in some areas. So that's the thing about watercolor. It always dries lighter than it appears. And you can also see where maybe some of the things that I added on, after. Added a little bit more color here and there, and maybe I think I added a little bit more to him after as well. So, and then I realized I actually filled in the white space there that you can see through the back. But, like I said, this is just a fun, creative picture. It's a great way to practice your washes, your variegated washes, your wet on your dry. Um, and I actually also realized that this is a mirror image of the actual picture that I sketched. And what I did with the tracing paper, I actually had it upside down, so I transferred it over in the opposite, but it doesn't matter. I could have actually put this camera in a mirror image and then it would have been on the right for you, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter because this is just a fun, colorful exercise. Now, something else that I did too is like if you've got some wet spots or whatever around it where you've dropped some watercolor, a lot of times what you can do, especially if they're non-staining colors, is you could re-wet that area that where you see that overlap or maybe where you went over and you don't want that to show. You just re-wet it, right? And then scrub a little bit and then lift that off. Now there's another way you could do it too, is what I done is these are just really cheap flats that I got from Michael's. They're a hog hair, and so they've got a little bit of bristle, a little bit of stiffness to them. And so you would wet that, and then you would use this as a scrubber, right? So then that would also see the wet, because that's because this is wet a little bit here. I'm able to scrub that away. So, and then there was a spot over here, right? There, see, that's gone. That blue, oh, okay, great. The blue left too. So, and that blue must have been the ultramarine blue because it's not staining. The other one is. Now, I'm going to re-wet, although I'm not sure that I want to add any more. I've been thinking a little bit about using my beautiful little metallics here and on how I'm going to, use those. I'm not quite sure. I was thinking maybe just as highlights, just to add some fun. You could see how evenly this one turned out, even though it did look like quite a little big puddle. And so there's a lot of even tones. And so I think what I might do is just come in maybe with a little bit of a darker, tone and just maybe add some shadow just for playing. Because remember, this is just for playing and trying and experimenting. Um, so I've got a little bit of the quinacridone rose. That's the Daniel Smith. And then I've got this cool blue, and I'm pretty sure that might be the Windsor blue, which is a real cool blue, and it's also staining. But anyway, mix them together. I got a nice dark purple. I probably could have even went over and used my Windsor violet, which is very dark. But I don't know. I'm just kind of like a mixer. And perhaps maybe if we went in and, where the ear flaps. See, it looks dark right now, but remember, it does dry. And I might even, it's just because I'm using a brush. See, now I can just bring in, this is a very thirsty, this is the natural hair. So it holds a lot of water. So see how that kind of just, I'm going to soften this other side too. How that sort of, it's not really what I intended to do, but that's okay. Everything's all okay. There's so many lovely little shares going out there. You know, people dealing with their quarantine. And there's one that somebody sent me in my inbox, and it's a little boy, and he's singing this song about every little thing's gonna be okay. And it's just so sweet, and he's just so sincere. It's beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna come in here, I think, and maybe, yeah, maybe I'll put a little bit of shadow where the trunk is kind of coming over the face here. Right? Give it a little bit of shadow around the eye area and just bring that out. See, it's just a little bit darker, not a lot. This one, I think, well, you know, if we really wanted to get technical, we could say, you know, there's a light source from this side or a light source from this side. I'm thinking probably for these boys it's high noon, so the light would probably be coming down from the top. I always think about that when I paint, and then that way when I build up my values, um, then I can think about where my shadows are going and that sort of thing. So it's just that's the way I trained. And well, not, yeah, I guess trained, I suppose that's kind of what you learn over the years, and you stay with it because it works, and that's what gives your pictures life too. You know, if you can get your values down, you can pretty much get anything. So if you notice now that it's just kind of blending in, so you got a little bit, it's a little bit richer, which I like because it was sort of a little bit flat. And I think I might even go in with just a little darker, that blue. I gotta get rid of some of it though because this is really potent. This brush is crazy. And let's just kind of, I'll leave the edges light though. So I rinsed out my pigment, rinsed out my brush, and I'm just come in now, see how it's leaving little puddles, because boy, I just, I'm always so amazed. I haven't used the natural hairs for quite some time because I've been so enamored with the new synthetics that are out there, that, and they work really well, but they don't hold near as much water. They don't um, carry as much water, therefore not as much pigment either. So you're always, um, you know, you're always filling up your brush too. So, but anyway, so let's even do this even darker down here because that's completely in the shade regardless of where the sun is. I'm going to do that even darker. So I'm just dropping that in there. Don't want to get over the little guy there. And then I'll leave that to dry. Maybe I'll even come over to this side because it's got that nice undercolor there. So when I drop that on top, it's going to pick up some of that. So you got a really nice little glazed look there. And then of course we should get right inside here too at the back because that's where the leg is at the back. Okay? And then also we should do this one here. So this is where you get to tweak it, you know, play with it, and then bring up some more shadow work. So we probably should, I'm going to discharge a little bit of this. You could actually even go over with a dry brush technique with this. So see, look at this. Look at how much pigment I'm still taking out of that brush. And so I'm going to lay it down on its edge. No, see, it's still really wet. Holy moly. Okay, I'm going to come in. I'm just blown away. Maybe I better use my synthetics. I'm so used to them. Okay, let's give it a whirl. And I don't have my other brushes here either, so I've got a couple down at the studio I use quite extensively. and they do great dry brush work. So thinking, you know, if we can get a kind of a dry brush look. You can't really see it, but it kind of looks like a scrape almost. I like that because that's going to kind of give that ear, you know, where the folds and all their little wrinkles and everything are. So I don't know if you can see that very well, but there we go. See how it's a little bit dry? And when that's dry, I'll come over it again and smooth out any of the hard edges. Right? So I'm going to come over on this side. See, there's just a little bit of residue on there. That's what I want. You don't want a lot of paint when you're doing a dry brush. You want to be able to, it's almost like eraser kind of a tendency over the surface. That's what you're doing, kind of scrubbing it over the surface. Okay, so let's leave that one alone for a minute. I do want to come back in here and maybe add a little bit more color in there. And let's see, all of a sudden it went out of focus again. Not really sure why. Hmm. Hmm. As soon as I brought it up to the camera closer. Oh boy. Anyway, darn it. I guess that's what you get when you're using just webcams. So I will look into seeing how I can do a better job at this. I don't, you know, there's no way I can afford to get a camera right now, but maybe down the road, see what happens. And then that's a matter of getting it set up, figuring out how that works. So I'm just adding a little bit of a light spotty yellows over his head. I'm going to let that dry. Now, same thing here. I want to add maybe some darker undertones there for where the ears flip over. The bottom part turned out quite dark already. I'm not really sure I'm happy about all that, but I don't want to overwork it either. Maybe if I pulled some of the color on the outside here, that'll give it the illusion of maybe. See how I'm dragging that color out? Lifting it out. That helps. Then I'm just gonna trying to follow kind of the anatomy of the of this magnificent creature too. You don't. I think I probably messed up something here in the body. I probably needed to do this a little better, and then this leg up here. But I mean, they do have a big body anyway, so. And so we could dry brush across the legs too if we wanted to get that wrinkly look. But like I said, this is just a fun little picture. You can do that if you like. I'm going to take some of the I call it Quin Gold, but it's quinacridone gold, because we've got the ears so light. See how I've got that there? And I'm just gonna, well, maybe that might be a little bit too watered down. Yeah, add a little bit more pigment there. And, maybe just kind of, okay, it's too wet. So just get rid of some of that water. It's a little bit crinkly, but what I'm going to do when I'm done here is I will spray mist the back of it, wet it down, get it damp, and lay it flat and put something heavy on the back to help hold that flat. And that'll flatten the picture out. This is what happens when you don't pre-stretch and you use a lot of water. So on this side, what am I going to do over here? Right about here, I guess. I already have a little bit of dark there, so I'll just swipe that. I did trim this off because that's where where I tore it from the watercolor paper pad, and it had those punched holes, from the rings. Some of them actually have a perforation underneath, and then you can just bend it. I think it's the smaller sizes, and then you could just rip it out. So I'm just going to go in here a little bit too. You know what I might even do? Add a little burnt umber, which is a great shading color. It's another one of the naturals. Mix that in with a little bit of that Quinn Gold. Let me get that pigment out, and maybe just a little bit of more Quinn Gold. No, maybe I'll add a little bit more burnt umber. Okay. So these are the conversations I have with myself when I'm painting. Sometimes they're in my head, sometimes they're out loud. So that's quite a lot on there. So I'll dip my brush off there, and then I'll come in with a thirsty brush and dab that down. Then I'll come over here. I might even go back over this here because that's the blue side. I might come back over. We got under the eye here. Let's go in the shadow part here. And maybe I'm adding just some of this Quinn to one corner. So it's kind of like a dull orange, and I'm just going to go under here. See, look at that. Using that Quinn. Oh, Quinn Gold is so much fun. And then actually, you know what? I should have done that. I keep picking all these little, tiny little hairs, but they're not really hair. It's almost like fuzz. Where it's coming from, I don't know. So here, so that's it looks a lot better, eh? So that's the thing, you do kind of like your base or whatever, and then, so it's always you go with the simplest first, and then you add some more value, and then you get into the detail if that's what you want, if that's where you want to go. I really like to try to see how loose I can get and then still get something representational. I always say if somebody can look at one of your pictures and know exactly what it is, then you're successful with it, right? You don't want to do something abstract and then, people look at it and they have absolutely no idea what it is. In terms of an animal, or of course, there's abstracts out there that are just emotional. There's not really any form to it. It's just color. But there's a harmony, there's a flow to it. Especially, I know there's some amazing abstract artists out there that I absolutely admire, and they're magical with the way that they pull their colors and shapes together, and you can really feel. I'm very empathic that way when it comes to artwork. There's some artworks that have actually even brought me to tears watching it or looking at it. It's just given me such emotion. And then there's other artwork that have absolutely made me cringe. I'm really not a fan of the kind of art where people are cutting cows up and things like that. I'm really not. I'm into more of the natural and honoring the God's creation and honoring our beautiful minds. I really don't like to even linger anywhere near the macabre, the ugly side. There's enough of that in the world. I don't really need to be that kind of an artist. So maybe those artists have some demons that they have to contend with inside themselves that makes them feel like they've got to express it through art that way. But that's the beauty of art. It's a form of expression. You know, that's the one thing that people can't take away from you. And I mean, a lot of times maybe they're just recreating the ugliness that they see and perhaps maybe or that they had to deal with. Art is cathartic and or it's inspiring or it's a poem. I find it's poetry on paper, but it just depends on what you're using it for. If it's just for relaxation and fun, it's all of that. It's everything. Any form of expression, any outward form of expression, makes you a healthier and happier human, as far as I'm concerned. That's my Patty's philosophy. But I find that when I'm painting, or even when I'm felting or working, but especially painting, there's uh, there's a lot of what's the word? I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but um, it's like I find myself sighing. So for me, a sigh is when any negative emotions are released, and when I'll find myself doing that, and I know that that's a good thing that I'm actually at a place where I'm releasing a lot of inner tension. I'm the type of person that holds a lot in. Um, and my cortisol levels rise. I had a lot of problems with that in my 40s. I had cortisol levels going through the roof. And I was actually kind of in a bit of a rough state. I was in a position at work that was not very healthy for me. And I worked, see, I'm doing this darker. I didn't like it so light as the above. So I made that beautiful orangey color with see that looks so much better, right? This is in shadow, this is standing out, this is like with their ears like this, it's high alert. They're walking towards you, they got the baby in the middle and they're saying, okay, we're gonna check you out. And this little guy's going, that's my mommy and daddy, you better not say anything. I'm gonna, those kids, my mom, my dad. We do this even when we're having our needle felted classes. There's been a couple of times where after we were done and we had our little animals in our hands, we would actually resort to these little 5-year-old kids and bring out our inner child and play with our felted animals and have little conversations amongst them. It's just too much fun. Okay, so I'm just kind of dabbing a little bit of extra pigment on top, just dropping it down in little spots. And that's just, oh, so good. We got a little bit of focus here. And so that's just adding a little bit more color. So you remember before when I said when this is all dry and I wanted to kind of do some kind of splattering? I'm just wondering what kind of splattering I can do. I think I'm gonna keep him very base though, because babies haven't quite grown into. They're very soft, very bland. Their skin is um, very smooth. So I'm not going to do a whole lot of wrinkles in its ears. I'm just going to leave him as cute as and as light and just as curious, but at the same time standing kind of close to his daddy. Could be the mother. You can decide which one. I think this one here is stepped down a bit in color. This one's much more colorful, so we can make the colorful one the male because they tend to have to stand out for some reason. in order to attract their mate, I suppose. And and then of course that's the mummy, and I think it's great too because the ears are even more pronounced. And if there's any danger towards their babies, man, mothers will really stand out. I see this here too. Remember I was saying I'll wait till this other part dries, and then I'll come in with a little bit on top of this here to make that just a little bit darker, but not as dark as that. There. And it's a beautiful blue. It's that ultramarine blue. It has that gorgeous reddish tone to it. It's like, I call it almost the reddish or, anyway, it doesn't matter. I ramble sometimes. It's early. Went to bed late and I got up early, but you know what? It doesn't matter, right? Because we can. If I needed to go for a nap later, I will. I'm just going to kind of go in here a little darker. And that was actually using a little bit of that residue I had left over where I mixed the prim quinacridone rose with that other blue, and then I usually often will go like this just to take any excess water out as opposed to dabbing it, because we don't want a lot of water on here. We just want to smooth the edges out so it doesn't look like a hard line. That's what I like to do. Just blend it in. See that? And then we'll just kind of come over here like that. And let's do a little bit here again. Just kind of come up here. Just dabbing. Should we use some metallics? Why not? That's still a little wet. Let's go over here. And I think that's what I'll do. I'll just finish off with some metallics and then that'll be it for this. I didn't pre-wet these, which I should have because they work better when they're a little gooey. I always like to pre-wet I have a little spray bottle and I actually use distilled water in these. I don't use tap water. Only because tap water has chlorine and fluoride, and we actually have it reverse. I don't know why I'm hiccuping. I haven't even had a cup of coffee or a hot lemon or anything yet. Well, got my face washed. Did my oil pull, which I do every morning. It's an oil pull with coconut oil. Really good for your teeth, and it actually pulls a lot of the toxins that that actually settle in our bodies while we sleep. Anyway, yeah, so now I got the hiccups and I'm not sure why. But so we have the reverse osmosis in the house, in the system, and so we've got really good high quality water. I think that might be a bit too dark here. Looking at it in the camera, it looks like it anyway, and it's fairly dry. Yeah. Maybe I'll bring that up a little bit in here. See, but that's a prominent eye there, so it's going to stick out a little further than what's below it. So that's why I'm making that, keeping that lighter. Okay, anyway, why don't we... So anyway, yeah, in case there's any adverse effects with the pigment, which, you don't know on the surface. And like I said before, I like to make everything archival. So even my water that I use for painting is from our good water. That's what I call the good water. So I'm using this beautiful coppery, and I'm just going over the surface like a wash. So I've added a lot of water to it, And it's just going to float on the surface. And I'll show you in the end here, though. I'm not going to do it now because when I bring my... And I usually have a separate water container for when I use metallics, because the mica floats on the top, right? Whenever you go in and discharge, the mica will float, and then of course you don't want to get that mixed in with other pigments where you don't want it, so you keep their metallic water, dirty water, separate. So I've just gone over that, and so that surface on the ears there, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the lighter one for the trunk. So I'm just doing it down in front here so you can see a little bit of water. I'm going to just come down the trunk and just let that drop on there. Yeah. Okay. So for the little guy, let's use the really light. It's almost a lemony color. Can add a little bit more water. There. Come in. Yeah. Such beautiful creatures. There we go. All right. Just on their heads. I don't think I'll put it on the bodies. Okay. So now for this beauty, what would be, what about this? It's kind of a rosy, pinky rose color. It's a little warm, but if I water that down, make sure I get some more clean water on this. If I really water that down, it might not affect the color too much. Yeah, there we go. It's really cool to see the mica powder shimmer over the surface and it moves. It's like it's just incredible to watch. I think if you were watching part one, which I hope you were, because then you wouldn't know what I'm talking about. It's amazing once you add the water and then you get your brush in there to move it around. And it's like the surface is like it's animated, it's moving. It's just incredible. It's got this crazy... They don't need to cover the whole thing, but I think that's enough. So when that's dry, that whole surface is going to be shimmery. Let's have a look here. Okay, and I always go with the back of my hand. It's a better indicator to see whether that's dry or not, and it is. If it's cool to the touch, then it's still wet. So there you have it. We're all done. I don't know if you can see, oop, see the sparkly. It's got a really nice little sheen. See that? Even without the light, you can see it, but I know just for the camera purposes here. Here. Oh, yeah. It's got a beautiful little shimmer. Look at our little guy. Yeah, you can see where I dropped it. I might even that out a little bit, but it's so nice. Well, thank you for joining me. And if you're so inclined and you'd like to help me out, see the description below. And if you'd like to, subscribe to my channel because I'm kind of in the swing of things now, and I probably will be posting videos a couple of times a week. Who knows? Um, and who knows, even as a result of all that, maybe I can get myself even a better camera. I'm going to try and do it with my phone down at the studio, but we'll see. We'll see, because I can't really see what it is. I'd like to be able to see. I've got my camera box up here so I can actually see what you're seeing, and that helps me to make adjustments. But when you're using your phone, you can't really see what you're doing unless you stick your head up in the face of it, and then that doesn't look very good. Anyway, I wish you a blessed Easter and some peace and some joy, and I hope that after painting and having fun with these little coloring and painting videos that you walk away with feeling a little happier and a little more at ease. Every little thing will be all right, just as that little guy said. Okay, have a wonderful day.